Let's speak to Andrew Fox now, who's defence expert and former paratrooper research fellow at the Henry Jackson Society. We love him. Andrew, great to have you back on the programme. Now, save your sandwich chat until the end. We will be asking you, so I give you the time for your subconscious to figure out what your favourite is. But in the meantime, why are we giving more money to UNRWA? We know it's out there. It's fact. It's been said. People have been, caught with red hands being in both Hamas and UNRWA. They're deeply infiltrated by these terrorists, and yet we're giving them 13 million quid. What's going on?
No idea. No idea. The Labour government seem absolutely adamant to irretrievably burn any chance we had of having influence with the Israelis, whilst at the same time giving Hamas every opportunity to survive. We've seen there are calls for an immediate ceasefire. They even signed the resolution in the UN last night, which asked for a ceasefire with no mention of hostage return. It's beyond me. 3,000 UNRWA teachers celebrating 7th of October in a WhatsApp group. 100 names of UNRWA employees provided to UNRWA and no action taken. Up to 10 people took part in the 7th of October massacre itself, all UNRWA employees. Head of the teachers union in Lebanon, Hamas. The servers for the tunnels of Hamas, for Hamas in the tunnels, were in a tunnel underneath UNRWA headquarters. Over 30 buildings within Gaza have been found with tunnel shafts, and they've been UNRWA buildings. I mean, it's absolutely insane.
That's mad. It basically sounds to me like UNRWA is the sort of, smart face, the UN face of Hamas. But that's absolutely shocking. I don't understand. I mean, when we give this 13 million quid, is this qualified spending, do you know? Is this like we're going to give you 13 million quid and UNRWA has to spend this on, I don't know, food aid or something? Or is this just, here you go, have a blank cheque, spend it on what you like, buy some more weapons if you want to?
I mean, I haven't seen the details of that, and I don't think there's any suggestion that UNRWA are involved in sort of weapons purchase on behalf of Hamas. I think we should probably clarify that. But we do know that they're deeply, deeply compromised, and we do know that they are, if not, directly linked to Hamas, they are Hamas adjacent, and that is more than enough for me for us to withhold money from them. And the killer point here is that there are other organisations that do their job better. UNRWA provide only 15% of humanitarian aid in Gaza, 15%. And there are other agencies out there that could do the job just as well. So why we're burning our money going to an organisation this compromised is absolutely beyond me.
It's beyond me as well. I tell you something else which is rather beyond me, and I normally like to think of myself as a bit of a student of geopolitics and spend a lot of time trying to figure it all out, is what is going on in Syria. It is confusing. Who's aiding and abetting this? Whose interest is this in? What's going to happen next? I mean, I know that's bombarding you with a lot of questions, but if you could give us the idiot's guide to where we're at and how this might progress, I'd be truly grateful.
Okay, so 2011 civil war. We had Islamic State in Iraq, who launched a group called al-Nusra into the Syrian civil war in the hope of gaining ground, and they did very successfully, and they were run by this gentleman al-Jilani. They were so successful that the ISIS wanted to bring al-Nusra back under the ISIS banner. Mr. al-Jilani refused and set up this independent group that went through a couple of evolutions and then turned into the HTS, who are hitting the headlines for having deposed the Assad regime in the last couple of weeks. Now, Assad's regime, brutal, violent, vicious, used chemical weapons on his own people. The Syrian civil war is the second bloodiest conflict of the 21st century. And prior to the fall of Assad, the country was kind of almost federalized. So you had an area in the north, east and south, kind of bending around there, that was owned by the Kurds. And now they're American-backed. HTS, the group who took Damascus, were Turkish-backed, but had a falling out with Turkey, so aren't directly Turkish-backed anymore. And there's a group called the NSA who are now attacking the Kurdish area. They are fully Turkish-backed. They're a bunch of thugs who defected from Assad's army. They're paid by Turkey to essentially stop the Kurds having their homeland. The area in the north, east and south area, Rojava, is deeply deeply violent at the moment, and it's really, really tense as well, because one side's backed by America, the Kurds, one side's backed by Turkey. They're both using Turkish and American air power, which means you've effectively got two NATO-backed proxies firing at each other. HTS, we know they're Al-Qaeda, we know they're Islamic State, we know where they had their origins from. They do have certainly a background that suggests they might not perhaps be as moderate as they're making themselves out to be. So really, we're in a waiting game now to see whether HTS are going to keep their promises and be pleasant, or whether they're going to revert to being full jihadi nightmares, in which case Syria is going to have a lot more violence for a lot more time to come.
Yeah, I think I can guess which way that might go. It's a bit like when we heard it's going to be Taliban 2.0, and they've gone absolutely tonto in Afghanistan.
Exactly.
But why are so many people over here sort of talking about, oh, well, they're nice, they're new, they're moderate, we can work with them, let's get Qatar on board to be the interlocutors and start doing some deals with them and make Syria a good, sensible place again? It doesn't seem to me like this lot are anybody we can trust. But what is the solution? Because it sounds so fragmented that it doesn't even seem to me that HTS can consolidate any sort of sensible form of power in Syria either.
Yeah, as I said, it's a waiting game right now. I mean, everyone's very excited about the end of the Assad regime, and kind of as a standalone event, that's no real bad thing. The only thing you could possibly say that he was keeping a degree of stability in the country. But, you know, for the last 2 years, Syria's been a narco state. The only way they've managed to keep afloat with the sanctions they've been under is by selling Captagon all around the Middle East and Eastern Europe. And obviously, a narco state is no good thing. So having that knocked off is good. What happens to the drugs trade in Syria is going to be really interesting. Does it get fragmented? Does it get centralized under another warlord? What happens with Russia is going to be really interesting. They pulled back from the country. They might lose their naval base on the coast at Tartus, which was their only Mediterranean base. That was used to avoid having to go through the Black Sea and risk Ukrainian missiles hitting the Russian fleet. It was also used as a sort of staging post for operations in Africa. And what I think everything that I'm saying now just really makes the case that this is so unbelievably complex. There are so many both internal and external variables. Asking where we go next, I think, is almost an impossible question to answer. And really, we are just in a waiting game.
Yeah, I mean, it really is a bugger's muddle over there. Talk to me about Shamima Begum. Rather than ask you should she come home or should she not, I'm more interested to know if you know anything about how dangerous she might be, what her affiliations might be, the sort of crimes that she supposedly committed. Do we have evidence that she perpetrated horrific acts?
I haven't seen the detail on that, if I'm honest. My law degree was 21 years ago, and so I've not really touched it since. The one thing I do know is about the camps that she's in. There are 50,000 ISIS fighters in those camps in northern Syria, which I think is a really big deal. I mean, what on earth are we going to do with them? Now, if we're going to refuse to take them home, that means you've essentially got 50,000 people stuck there. They're neither in prison or kind of released, and so there's plenty of potential for these ISIS fighters to either break out, erupt into enormous amounts of violence, and cause havoc wherever they are. So it's that those 50,000 strong camps in northern Syria, I think, are a massively overlooked security concern if those fighters break free and start causing havoc.